Hello everyone, I hope you're having a lovely day. Thanks so much for stopping by. Today I'm doing 10 cards, 1 kit using the Simon Says Stamp June 2018 card kit. So lots to do. We're just going to jump in with our first card. Now for card number 1, I'm going to pull out my stamp platform here and we're going to do some stamping. This stamp image was super large. So stamp platform worked beautifully for this. Now I grabbed a piece of the pattern paper that came with the kit this month, and I'm going to go over the corner with the large stamp. I got to scoot this over just a little bit. I want to save enough room for a panel using the same pattern paper. So I'm just going to adjust it so I can stamp that corner there. Now this pattern paper was beautiful. I love the two-tone look of it. I'm just going to carefully lift it up and then go over it with my anti-static powder tool, and then I'm going to stamp it with my Versamark ink. Okay, now I decided to go over my image with my Simon Says Stamp Fine Detail White embossing powder. And then I went ahead and melted that, just in that corner. Now I'm going to fussy cut around the edge of this little floral image, and then I have a stitched rectangle die. I'm going to cut out my panel. Now I didn't quite make a full-size panel. You can see that bottom corner didn't cut out, but I wasn't too worried about it because this floral piece that we embossed is going to go on the corner, and it's just going to cover that up. Now this is going to go on the cornflower blue cardstock that also came in the kit. And I decided to add a little bit of texture to this pattern paper, so I'm using the embossing folder. This is such a beautiful embossing folder, and I was actually a little bit nervous because I wasn't sure. Sometimes when there's a deep etching with your embossing folders, it will tear a regular piece of pattern paper, and it did a little bit, but it wasn't that noticeable, so I just continued with my layout here. Now I popped up my floral image, and this is going to go in the corner. I just used some foam tape, and I think the two-tone look of this looks so pretty. Now I'm going to just directly adhere this to my card base. My card base is a A2 size card base. That's going to go right in the center. And then for my sentiment, I stamped the sentiment that says love and hugs, just using my VersaFine ink, and then I popped that up with some foam tape and placed that on my card. Now for a little bit of shimmer, I'm going to add some clear sequins. And that finishes off card number 1. Okay, now moving along to card number 2, I cut out this pattern paper here. It was so pretty. I love the water color look of this. Now, I'm also going to cut out the opposite side. I'm going to fussy cut around it. And you can see that in the very top. This month's kit came with some gold foiling, so I attached a piece of that to the very bottom of this panel. Now this is going to go towards the top of my second cornflower card base. And then I want to give this a little bit of dimension, so I added foam tape behind this, and this is going to go on the very top. The flowers were very similar. In fact, I thought they were the same, but they're a little bit off. But I think the outcome turned out really pretty. Now I stamped the sentiment that says "You are a treasure to me," again using VersaFine ink. And then I didn't like that blue bottom, so I decided to take some striped pattern paper that also came in the kit, and I just added that to the very bottom. Now for a little bit of shimmer, I'm going in with some Nouveau glitter drops. These are if I can remember here, let me see, White Blizzard. It's a real pretty iridescent glitter. Now on to card 3, and we're going to do some more stamping, and this time I'm using the smoke colored cardstock. I just trimmed down a panel that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches Using my VersaFine ink, I'm going to use that same large stamped image, and I stamp that towards the bottom. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some clear embossing powder over the image, and then I'm going to go ahead and melt that. And I think the black on the smoke color cardstock just looks so pretty. Now next I'm going to take a piece of masking paper. This masking paper is from Inkadinkadoo. And I'm going to place that in my stamp platform, and we're going to create a mask with that same floral image. I did just fussy cut out the very top portion of it. I wasn't too worried about the bottom. So I'm going to remove the backing off of my mask here and place that over my image. And then we're going to do some more stamping. Now, the stamp set came with some large blocked letters. There was beautiful, loved, happy, and joy. And I thought it'd be fun to create a background with those. So we're going to start off stamping the happy. And I'm going to go over the slate portion of the cardstock with the sentiment there. Now I wanted to fill in that entire background with these block letters. So we're going to start off with the happy, and then next we're going to go in with the loved. The only block one I didn't use was beautiful because it was on the longer side. And I did that also with the word joy. And I'm just filling in so my entire background is filled with these lovely sentiments. Okay, now to give this, I removed the mask, and then I'm grabbing a white watercolor pencil, and I'm going to fill in all of my letters with the white. And this was a little bit tricky. Actually, kind of went outside the lines a little bit. Hindsight, maybe I would have used a watermark pencil or a watermark pen, but I did color in the flowers also. Now to give this a little bit of shimmer, I decided to go with my Aqua Shimmer pen by Nuvo. And I'm going to just blend out all that white watercolor pencil. Now, once I got all of that done, I'm going to pop this panel up with some foam tape. And then that's going to go on my, my card base here. For a few bells and whistles, I'm going to go in with some Ebony Black Nuvo Crystal Drops in the center of the flowers and then just around the top portion. But I'm basically going to keep this very simple, and that was card number 1, or card number 3. Now for card number 4, I'm using this beautiful embossing folder again, but this time using the gold foil cardstock that came in the kit. So pretty. Now once we have that done, I'm going to take another piece of the foil and we're going to do a little bit of embossing. So taking that same large floral image again, I'm going to go over it with my Versamark ink. And I did use my anti-static powder tool. And then I thought it'd be fun to do a two-tone gold. So I'm going to go in with some gold embossing powder. And then I'll go ahead and use my heat gun and melt that. And I did take a stitched rectangle die and I cut out a small panel. I wanted a little bit of the embossed area in the background to show through. Okay, now for my sentiment, we're actually going to adhere this to my card base. I have a white card base here. Okay, now I decided to stamp the word loved on the very bottom portion of this gold cardstock here. Now I'm going to stamp it with some Versamark ink right in the center, and then I'm going to go over that with some white embossing powder. Once that's melted, I did stamp the rest of the sentiment. Now the rest of, well actually, the rest of the sentiment says, "You are so loved." But I'm going to pop this panel up with foam tape and here's where I blocked off the "You Are So." And I did heat emboss that with the gold embossing powder. I'm going to place that towards the left on top of the left. And I thought it needed a little bit more. So I went in with one of the flower images and I stamped it with Versamark ink and then added some white embossing powder and fussy cut around it. And I just adhered that to my card, and that finishes off that one. Now for my next card. This kind of was a little intimidating for me. I wasn't sure what to expect with this, but this was so fun. This is the Tim Holtz Distress Resist Spray. So I'm adding it to a piece of white cardstock. Now this stuff is super duper sticky. I would suggest a cardboard box or a huge, well, this is a Simon Says Stamp disposable grid mat pad. But it was super sticky, and it did get a little bit on my glass mat, and it was very difficult to get off. So maybe a cardboard box would have worked better. But I just let that dry, and then I went around it with some shaded lilac, and then on the edges with seedless preserves. Now, taking a stitched rectangle die, I want to cut out a frame with this. So I'm taking a smaller size and putting it on the inside, and I'm going to just die cut that out. Now, using one of my Swiffer cloths, I'm just intensifying the color by wiping off the distress ink from the distress spray. Now, this feather piece was so pretty, and I wanted to use that, so I just fussy cut around it. And then to give it a finished look, I'm going around the edges with my Vintage Photo Distress ink. Now, using my tape runner, I'm going to adhere that feather piece right behind my frame. But the bottom feather and the feather over here to the right are going to stick on the outside. And I think that looks really neat. Now originally I was going to use the background panel, but I thought it was just a little too much. So we're going to actually save that other panel for another card. But I'm going to pop this up with some foam tape and place this on a white card base. For my sentiment, I stamped the sentiment that says "Love and Hugs." And I added a piece of foam tape behind there and just placed it on my card base. And then for a little bit of shimmer, I'm going to go in with some clear sequins around my panel here. And then that finishes off that card. Very pretty. I love the purple, the lavender. Now for card number 6, we're going to do a little bit more stamping, again using the large floral image in the stamp set. This is actually Canson XL watercolor cardstock, and I didn't clean my stamp too well because when I used my Versamark ink over it, all the ink that was left on my image was just grabbing to that watercolor cardstock. So originally I was going to use white embossing powder, but then I did a 180 and decided to go in with gold embossing powder, and that gold's going to cover up any of that black ink that was left over. Now I wanted to use the watercolor palette here that came with the kit, and so I sprayed my panel with a fine mist spray bottle, and then I'm just coloring it in with the watercolors. I think this was so fun. I love doing this, and it was very easy because after you heat embossed it with the gold embossing powder, you didn't have too much area to watercolor, so you just let the watercolor do the work, and I like that. I chose some blues and some oranges. I think those two colors complement each other very well. Adding a little bit of yellow also. And this card turned out, the camera's really not doing it too justice. In fact, if you guys want to go over to my blog, you'll see close-up pictures that are a lot clearer, but it turned out so pretty. I was really happy with the way this looked. Now I set that aside to dry a little bit, and then using a stitched rectangle die, I'm just going to cut out my panel. And then I did stamp the sentiment that says "Sending lots of thanks." I just trimmed down the ends a little bit and then added a piece of foam tape right behind it, and that's going to go on the very bottom left here. I chose the peacock cardstock, or the card base that I created with the cardstock that came in the kit for my background. Added a few sequins, and that's it for that card. Very elegant, I think. Very pretty. I'm kind of glad I didn't use the white embossing powder for that one. Okay, now moving along to our next card. This pattern paper was so pretty, and so I decided to fussy cut out two of the flowers that were towards the center. Now I wanted to also use the leftover piece from the feather card that we made, and I really like the background on here, so I wanted to attempt something, and it actually turned out really well. I just took a piece of Scotch tape and taped the portion that I had cut out back together. Next, I'm going to take a stitched rectangle die, and I'm going to cut out with that cut out right in the center. Now my panel that we had used earlier is going to cover up that hole. So it's a great way to stretch a cardstock, especially such pretty cardstock. Now I already added foam tape behind that panel, and I'm just kind of arranging how I want my scene to go here. So I'm going to stamp the sentiment that says happy birthday with VersaFine ink, and I wasn't sure how it was going to stamp over the distress resist spray, but it stamped okay. I'm going to adhere my flower. Well, first we're going to put this on our card base. And that worked beautifully. Now there was a little cut line where I taped right there on the bottom, so I'm using that leaf to cover it up. And I'll add some foam tape behind this little flower, and then that's going to go on the top of the purple flower. And then I thought the distress gave a really nice interest to this panel, so I'm going to leave it like that, and that's card number 8. Now for card number 9, oh, that was card number 7. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, card number 8. I'm taking a circle die and cutting out a little window off to the left here, and then using that beautiful embossing folder, I embossed it. Now I wanted to play with this distress resist spray again, so I sprayed a little bit over that embossed panel there, and I'm also going to grab another piece of white cardstock and spray that as well. Now I did use my heat gun to dry up the spray. Next we're going to use some Distress Oxide inks to go over this. This is Faded Jeans. It's a real pretty blue, and this creates the most prettiest background. I was so happy with this. I'm going to go over that entire panel with my Faded Jeans, kind of intensifying the color along the edges. And that distress just gave it like a whitewash kind of a look. It was so pretty. Now I'm going to take the same Faded Jeans and shade in a small circle. And then I'm also going to go in with some Distress Oxide. This is peeled paint. And I'm going to go over that top portion of the white cardstock. Okay, now we're going to stamp the largest single flower in the stamp set right over the blue shaded area, and I'm just going to go ahead and use my VersaFine ink. And then from my stash I have some actual leaf dye. I'm going to use that and cut out two little leaf flourishes, and I'm going to go ahead and fussy cut out my little flower. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and attach my background panel to a white card base, and you'll see it's going to leave me a little bit of a white edge. I always like that look. Just using my tape runner, we're going to adhere that. Now I want to add a little bit more color, so I decided to go in that circle area with some Wild Honey Distress Oxide ink. And I really got it intensified. It kind of, when I was finished, it kind of looked like a real bright blob in the center. But I wasn't worried because we're going to cover that up. Now for the sentiment, I chose the word joy. I'm going to stamp that, just again using VersaFine ink. And then I also stamped the sentiment that says wishing you. And I just blocked it off and popped that up with some foam tape. we're going to place that right above the joy. Next, we're going to take some foam tape and add our flower. And then I'll use my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive to attach my leaf flourishes. The detail that Distress Resist spray gives is just gorgeous. I'm going to trim down the bottom portion of my leaf here and then just tuck that under. Now, for bells and whistles, I chose some these are iridescent sequins. I'm just going to add a few here and there. And then I did go over the center of my joy with my Nuvo glitter drops, the White Blizzard, just to give it a little bit of shimmer. Now we're already moving on to card number 9. I'm going to take my stamp platform here, and since I had that the mask, I thought, well, we're going to put that to good use. So I stamped that large floral image, and then I just placed that mask that we'd used earlier right on top, and then I shifted my floral image up a little bit higher, and I stamped it again. And I'm using Memento Tuxedo Black ink. I'm going to color in these images with my Copic markers. Now, to save time, I did skip the coloring, but I have I'm just going to remove the mask here, and it's going to create a real full background, and I really like that. But I'm going to just take a stitch rectangle die and cut out a panel, and then I did color it in. Sorry about that. But I did have the peacock colored card base left, and so I thought this would work beautifully. But these are the colors I used, and then these are the 2 green ones that I used for the green. These images were very easy to color in, and I really thought they turned out so pretty. To give it a little extra detail, I did go over with my white gel pen, added a few dots to the center of the flowers, and it just makes them pop, boy. I'm going to add some foam tape behind this panel, and then place that again on my peacock card base, and you can see the colors coordinated just beautifully with that. I added a little bit of shimmer with some more of the Nuvo glitter drops, the White Blizzard, added my happy birthday sentiment, and that was it for that card. Now for my final card, this paper was so pretty. I really love this. So I'm going to cut out a panel, and then with that leftover piece, I'm going to place it in my Mini Misty with 2 of the flower images that were in the stamp set. Now I'm going to use my anti-stack powder tool, and I'm going to stamp these flowers with my Versamark ink, and then I'm going to move my magnet, and then I'm going to go over them with some white embossing powder. And then I'll just go ahead and then fussy cut those out. I think this card turned out really soft and really pretty. Now, once I have those melted and cut out, I need to stamp the sentiment. So I just chose the word beautiful. It was a large sentiment, and I'm going to stamp it on some vellum, just using my VersaFine ink. And then I'm going to go over that with some gold embossing powder, and then I just trimmed it down. Now, I was just kind of playing around with my arrangement, and so I'm going to grab my white card base, and I'm thinking my panel will go in the center along with my flowers, and then I'll just adhere the beautiful with my vellum tape runner. So far everything is just one layer, and then to give it a little bit of dimension, I had 2 butterfly dies from my stash, and using the gold cardstock that came with the kit, I cut out 2 gold butterflies. I added a few clear sequins. I'm just using the cap to flatten them a bit. But that completes that card. I thought it was so soft and so pretty. So here's a look at all 10 cards that I made today using the Simon Says Stamp June 2018 card kit. I hope this gives you some ideas and inspiration on how to use this kit. I know it's such a beautiful kit, but I thought I wanted to give you guys a few different ideas on how to use it. I love hearing your comments. Let me know what you think. I'm not sure if the kit's still available. I think it did sell out, but I'll leave links in the description area for you guys. And again, you can visit my blog for close-up pictures that are a little bit more clear. My camera is just not the greatest. I wish you a fantastic day. Thanks so much for stopping by. We'll see you again real soon.